So after checking out the new Skullcandy Hesh ANC and the Skullcandy Crusher Evos, I'm really excited about the future of Skullcandy. Both the Hesh ANC and Crusher Evos have improved build quality from their predecessors, and the Hesh ANC have very impressive active noise cancellation and ambient mode for a pair of entry-level headphones. But today, we're going to be breaking down Skullcandy's current headphone lineup. We're going to go from the Hesh ANC to the Venues to the Crusher Evos and the Crusher ANCs. Now, when it comes to price, the Hesh ANC, which were released in Q4 of 2020, retailed for $130. The Skullcandy Venue, which were released in Q4 of 2018, retailed for $180. The Skullcandy Crusher Evo, which were also released in Q4 of 2020, retailed for $200. And finally, there's the Skullcandy Crusher ANC, which were released in Q4 of 2019, which retailed for $320. Now, long story short, I really like and recommend both the Hesh ANC and Crusher Evos, where I would avoid picking up both the Venues and Crusher ANC. So, if you want to pick either of these two headphones up, they'll be linked down below. Now, first off, let's talk about the included carrying cases here. Now, both of Skullcandy's newer headphones, like the Hesh ANC and Crusher Evo, come included with carrying pouches. Whereas the older headphones here, like the Venues and Crusher ANC, come included with hard shell carrying cases. Now, given that I would categorize the Crusher ANC as a pair of premium headphones, I would expect a hard shell case here. Whereas with the Venues, not so much, because I would categorize these headphones as a pair of entry-level headphones. But regardless, something that I think Skullcandy is doing with their newer headphones is cutting costs on their cases and reallocating that budget into improving the build quality of their headphones, which is perfectly fine with me. Because when it comes to build quality, this is one of my favorite things about both the Hesh ANC and Crusher Evo. For a pair of entry-level headphones, the Hesh ANC feel very premium. The ear cups have a soft touch feel to them, they have glossy arms, their headband has a slightly slate finish to it, and the leatherette on the headphones feels pretty good as well for a pair of entry-level headphones. And the build quality of the Crusher Evos is great as well. Now, the majority of this body is covered in soft touch. The top portion of this headband has a hit of Alcantara, and underneath this headband, there's padded silicone. And then there's the leatherette on these headphones, which just feels great. It's soft and supple, and there's even a slight grain to it. Plainly said, the leatherette on these headphones does put some of the larger companies out there to shame. Now, the more premium Crusher ANCs also have the same great feeling leatherette, but personally, I do prefer the build of the Crusher Evos over the Crusher ANCs. The Crusher ANCs have a mostly smooth plastic body. Now, there's nothing wrong about a plastic body, but the Evo's soft touch, Alcantara, and silicone body just feels more premium. But finally, there are the Venues, which have soft touch ear cups, a textured plastic headband, and good feeling leatherette. But personally, I just don't like the build quality of these headphones because they just feel flimsy by comparison, and these headphones like to crack and squeak a lot whenever you handle or flex them. But with all that being said, Skullcandy's newer headphones do have noticeably improved build quality over their older counterparts, which is great. However, when it comes to fit, I can't give any of these headphones a gold star. Now, all of these headphones are big head approved, but they all do have a firmer fit to them. Now, clamping force aside, both of these crushers are on the heavier side, weighing in at 310 grams. And like I've said in the past, your typical pair of ANC headphones weigh in at around 270 grams. So you are going to notice both of these headphones when you have them on, even when you're just sitting still. And you're really going to notice them when you're walking around with them on. Whereas since the Hesh ANC weigh in at 225 grams and the Venues weigh in at 240 grams, you're not really going to notice them when you're wearing them, which is good. But a problem that all of these headphones have in common is their padding. All of these headphones have rather cramped ear pads. Now, the ear pads on the Hesh ANC are a little roomier than the ear pads on the Venue, the ear pads on the Evo are a little roomier than the ones on the Hesh, and the ear pads on the Crusher ANCs are a little roomier than the ear pads on the Evos. Now, even though I can make these ear pads work with my average size ears, unfortunately, if you have larger ears or ears that stick out a lot, then none of these Skullcandy headphones might fit you all that well. But finally, I do want to address one problem that's unique to the Evos. Even though I really like these headphones because they're just a lot of fun, unfortunately, since the padding underneath this headband is rather stiff, for me, these headphones do create a hot spot on the top of my head after an hour or an hour and a half of wearing them. So I do have to take them off and take a break. So for that reason, technically, I would have to say the Crusher ANC are more comfortable than the Evos, because their padding is noticeably softer. But overall, all of these headphones fit okay, but they all do have a firmer fit to them and cramped ear pads. But now let's talk about tech specs. Now the Hesh ANCs, Crusher Evos, and Crusher ANCs all charge via a USB-C port, as they should. But since the venues came out all the way back in 2018, which were much simpler times, they still charge via a micro USB port. Now, when it comes to battery life, both the venues and Crusher ANCs have an advertised battery life of 24 hours with their active noise cancellation turned on. But you can always stretch out the battery life on both of these headphones if you use them with their ANC turned off. Whereas the Hesh ANC have an advertised battery life of 22 hours with their active noise cancellation turned on, and the Crusher Evos have an advertised battery life of 40 hours, but these headphones don't have active noise cancellation. However, the battery life on these headphones really is dependent on how high you have their bass, and that also goes for the Crusher ANCs. So if you have the bass slider on these headphones turned up a lot, then you can expect your battery life to be a little shorter. But nonetheless, all of these headphones do have decent battery lives. But when it comes to connectivity, strangely enough, the venues are the only headphones here that can be connected to two devices at the same time, so that you can easily hot swap from one device to another, which could be a big deal for power users. Whereas with all of these other headphones, they can only be connected to one device at a time. Now, Skullcandy claims that you can connect the Crusher ANCs to two devices at the same time, but I've never been able to get them to do it. But more importantly, when it comes to watching movies or videos on your phone, all of these headphones have zero latency across the board, which is always great. But if you want to, you can still use a wired connection with any of these headphones because all of these headphones still have an easy-to-reach 3.5mm audio jack. Now, I know this sounds basic, but I really do want to put it out now because a lot of headphones are starting to remove their audio jacks. And now that the AirPods Max are out and they don't have an audio jack, I'm worried that this trend is going to start to accelerate. But now let's talk about listening to music with these headphones. Now, all of these headphones have a bass-heavy sound signature, but the Crushers are on a whole other level, which we'll get into in a minute. Now, when it comes to sound on both the Hesh ANC and Venue, both of these headphones sound very different when they have their ANC turned off versus when they have their ANC turned on. With their ANC turned on, they're both going to get narrowed up a lot and their bass isn't going to hit as hard or resonate as deep. So with either of these headphones, if you want to get the best sound out of them, you gotta use them with their ANC turned off. Now, from a performance standpoint, the Hesh ANC sound much better than the Venues, specifically because the Hesh ANC do a much better job of controlling their bass. With the Venues, their bass can bottom out and start sputtering quite frequently if you're listening to music with too much bass. Whereas that's not a problem with the Hesh ANC. The only critique I have about the sound on the Hesh ANC is that I feel their highs are a little too turned up, so they can get a little ear piercing in certain situations. But other than that, the Hesh ANC are a fun pair of headphones to listen to. They have a bass-heavy sound signature, and they're going to physically rattle your head a decent amount without bottoming out, and their vocals are still pronounced so they don't get drowned out. But then there are the Crusher ANCs and Crusher Evos, whose bass are on a whole other level. Now, both of these headphones have your standard 40mm drivers that handle the majority of your music, but what makes these headphones special is that they both have a secondary pair of drivers that essentially act like subwoofers. So the bass on these headphones will make you see double, and they're going to make your teeth chatter. Listening to music with these headphones is just a lot of pure dumb fun. Now, from a performance standpoint, these headphones sound the same, and they are both putting out the same amount of head rattling bass. Now, the instrument separation and sound stages on these headphones are decent, but quite honestly, these headphones are all about bass. But personally, I do prefer to listen to music with the Crusher Evos over the Crusher ANCs, specifically because I prefer how the Evos sound when they're set to their movie EQ. While in their movie EQ, the Evos will raise their mids and highs a little bit, making it easier to hear your vocals over all of their head rattling bass. Whereas with the ANCs, you're stuck with their stock EQ. Now, both Crushers have this personalized EQ option, but personally, I just wish that I could manually adjust my own EQ. So right now, the Evos are the only ones here that give you a few EQ modes to choose from, whereas the ANCs are either stock or personalized audio. But with all that being said, the important thing here is that both of these headphones have the same amount of head rattling bass, but I do prefer the Evos over the ANC when they're set to their movie EQ. But now let's talk about the active noise cancellation on these headphones. Now, the Evos are the only headphones here that don't have active noise cancellation, whereas all of these other headphones do. Now, from a performance standpoint, like I mentioned earlier, the ANC on both the Venue and Hesh ANC really changes how they sound. They get narrowed up a lot and their bass won't hit as hard. And believe it or not, the Crusher ANCs, which are the most premium headphones here, actually block out the least amount of noise here. But so that you can see for yourself, we're going to jump into an ANC test. So, like you may have just seen, the Crusher ANCs block out the least amount of noise here, whereas the Hesh ANC block out noticeably more noise and the Venues block out a little more noise. However, I do feel the Hesh ANC have the better performing active noise cancellation here because the Hesh have significantly less cabin pressure than the Venues. Now, you still feel a little something something with the Hesh ANC, but they still have less cabin pressure than the Venues. And also with the Venues, their ANC does have a noticeable hiss to it, which could be distracting when watching movies or videos with these headphones. Whereas the Hesh ANC don't have any such hissing. So overall, I do think the Hesh ANC are the winners here when it comes to ANC. They block out more noise than the Crusher ANCs, but with less cabin pressure and less hissing than the Venues. And the Hesh ANC are also the winners here when it comes to their ambient mode. The ambient mode on the Hesh ANC sounds very natural with a zero hissing in the background, and their microphone array does a great job of blocking out wind noise when walking outdoors. Whereas the ambient mode on the Crusher ANCs isn't all that great because they pick up a lot of wind noise when walking outdoors, which is distracting if you're commuting with them, and they also have a lot of hissing in the background, which is distracting for when you're watching movies with them. And then there are the Venues, which don't have an ambient mode. They have a monitoring mode, where if you press this button, they'll lower the volume of your music and pump in all of the ambient sound around you, so that you can quickly talk to someone without having to take your headphones off like this. But if you try to raise the volume, it won't go up. So you can't have your ambient mode turned on and play music at the same time like you can with these other two headphones, which could be a big deal for commuters. So with all that being said, the Hesh ANC have both the best performing active noise cancellation and ambient mode here. Now, before we jump into the microphone test, I do want to quickly point out that all of these headphones have Talos support. Now, personally, I am indifferent about tile support, and I would prefer if these headphones had better app support where I can manually adjust their EQ to my liking. But tile support is there if you want it. But finally, here's the microphone test. Now, without a doubt, the venues do have the worst sounding microphone here, specifically because my voice sounds very robotic. And unfortunately, the microphone on both Crushers aren't the best either. Now, the microphone on the Crusher ANCs does sound rather shallow, and there is a constant hissing in the background. And the microphone on the Crusher Evos is pretty much the same story. My voice does sound rather shallow, and there is a constant hissing in the background. But surprisingly, the Hesh ANCs have the best sounding microphone here. Now, I might sound a little far away, but other than that, I do think the microphone on these headphones is good enough for like a quick phone call. But with all that being said, personally, I really like one half of Skullcandy's lineup and the other half not so much. Personally, I wouldn't recommend either the Crusher ANC or Venues right now. The active noise cancellation and ambient mode on the Crusher ANCs isn't the greatest, and with the Venues, their active noise cancellation has a lot of cabin pressure, and they lack a full-on ambient mode. But also, their bass does like to sputter a lot, and their build quality isn't the best. But Skullcandy's newer headphones, on the other hand, are a whole other story. The Hesh ANC are a great pair of entry-level headphones because their active noise cancellation is quite impressive, and they have a really good sounding ambient mode. They have really good build quality for entry-level headphones, and they also have a fun bass-heavy EQ. And then there are the Crusher Evos. Now, I wouldn't recommend these as a pair of daily drivers because of their lack of active noise cancellation and an ambient mode, but the Crusher Evos are a great pair of secondary headphones because their head-rattling bass is just a lot of pure dumb fun. And it also doesn't hurt that the Crusher Evos feel way more premium in your hands than the current Crusher ANCs. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any other products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.